സുഹൃത്തുക്കളെ, അഗോറ 2021 മൾട്ടി ഇന്ന് നമ്മുടെ വെബിനാർ കോംപ്ലക്സ് ഡിസീസ് യോഗ ഇൻ ഹെൽത്ത് പ്രൊമോഷൻ ആൻഡ് മാനേജ്മെന്റ് എന്നുള്ളതാണ്. മാനസിക സമ്മർദ്ദവും ഉത്കണ്ഠയും ഒഴിവാക്കാൻ, ജീവിതശൈലി രോഗങ്ങളിൽ നിന്ന് മുക്തരാവാൻ യോഗയിലൂടെ കഴിയുമെന്ന് തെളിയിക്കുന്ന ഒരു പ്രഭാഷണമായിരിക്കും ഇത് എന്ന് ഞാൻ വിചാരിക്കുകയാണ്. വർണ്ണാഭമായ ഭാരതീയ സംസ്കാരം ലോകത്തിന് നൽകിയ അമൂല്യ സംഭാവനകളിൽ ഒന്നാണ് യോഗ. ഭാരതീയ ഋഷിമാർ മാനവരാശിക്ക് നൽകിയിട്ടുള്ള ഈ അമൂല്യമായ വരദാനം, യോഗയുടെ സവിശേഷതകളെ മെഡിക്കേഷണൽ തെറാപ്പിയുമായി ബന്ധപ്പെടുത്തിക്കൊണ്ടായിരിക്കണം ഇന്നത്തെ പ്രഭാഷണം എന്ന് ഞാൻ ഊഹിക്കുന്നു. മനുഷ്യന്റെ ആത്മീയവും ശാരീരികവുമായ കഴിവുകളെ ഉണർത്തി സുഖവും ശാന്തിയും കൈവരിക്കാൻ യോഗയും ധ്യാനവും പരിശീലിച്ചാൽ മതിയെന്ന് ഇന്ന് ലോകം മുഴുവൻ അംഗീകരിക്കപ്പെട്ടിരിക്കുന്നു. പതഞ്ജലി മഹർഷിയാണ് യോഗ ദർശനത്തിന്റെ ആവിഷ്കർത്താവ്. അദ്ദേഹത്തിന്റെ യോഗസൂത്രം എന്ന കൃതിയിലാണ് വ്യാകരണ ഭാഷ്യകാരനും കൂടിയായ പതഞ്ജലി പുഷ്യമിത്ര രാജാവിന്റെ രാജസദസ്സിലെ അംഗമായി. നിസ്സാര കാര്യങ്ങൾക്ക് പോലും മുൻപിൻ നോക്കാതെ എടുത്തു ചാടുന്നവരും തുടർന്ന് വലിയ മാനസിക സംഘർഷം അനുഭവിക്കുന്നവരുമാണ് നമ്മളിൽ പലരും. ജീവിത സാഹചര്യങ്ങളിലും ജീവിത വീക്ഷണത്തിലും ആഹാര രീതിയിലുമൊക്കെ ഉണ്ടായിട്ടുള്ള മാറ്റങ്ങളാണ് ഇതിന് കാരണം. ഇത്തരം അവസ്ഥകൾ അനാവശ്യമായ ആകുലതകൾക്കും രോഗങ്ങൾക്കും കാരണമാകുന്നു. ഏത് പ്രതിസന്ധിയിലും പോസിറ്റീവായ നിലപാട് സ്വീകരിക്കുവാനും ശരീരത്തിന്റെ രോഗപ്രതിരോധ ശേഷി മെച്ചപ്പെടുത്താനും യോഗ സഹായിക്കുന്നു എന്ന് ഗവേഷണങ്ങൾ തെളിയിച്ചിട്ടുണ്ട്. ദീർഘമായി ശ്വാസമെടുക്കുമ്പോൾ തലച്ചോറിലേക്ക് കൂടുതൽ ഓക്സിജൻ എത്തുന്നു. ഇത് മാനസിക സമ്മർദ്ദം കുറയ്ക്കും. പ്രാണായാമങ്ങൾ ചിട്ടപ്പെടുത്തിയത് ഈ നിരീക്ഷണങ്ങളിൽ നിന്നാണ്. അനുലോമ വിലോമ പ്രാണായാമം. യോഗാസനങ്ങൾക്കൊപ്പം ആഹാരനിഷ്ഠ കൂടി പുലർത്തിയാൽ മാനസിക സമ്മർദ്ദങ്ങളെ നമുക്ക് അതിജീവിക്കാനും നിയന്ത്രിക്കാനും കഴിയും. അതോടൊപ്പം ശരീരത്തിൽ അടിഞ്ഞുകൂടുന്ന ആന്തരിക മാലിന്യങ്ങളെ നീക്കി ശുദ്ധി വരുത്താനും അങ്ങനെ ശരീരത്തെയും മനസ്സ് വിമലീകരിക്കാനും നിത്യവുമുള്ള യോഗ നമ്മെ സഹായിക്കുന്നു. പേശികളുടെയും സന്ധികളുടെയും ആരോഗ്യം, ഹൃദയാരോഗ്യം, പ്രമേഹ നിയന്ത്രണം, ചീത്ത കൊളസ്ട്രോളിന്റെ നിയന്ത്രണം, ശരീരഭാഗം കുറയ്ക്കൽ എന്നിവയെല്ലാം യോഗ സഹായിക്കുന്നതിനാൽ ആരോഗ്യത്തിന്റെ ശാസ്ത്രമായാണ് യോഗ അറിയപ്പെടുന്നത്. വളരെ നല്ല ഒരു പ്രഭാഷണം കേൾക്കുവാൻ നിങ്ങളേവരെയും ഒരിക്കൽ കൂടി സ്വാഗതം ചെയ്യുന്നു. I am very happy to welcome once again Professor Dr. Rima Dada to this webinar Agora 2021. Thank you all.
Thank you, Sunil Kumar sir. Let me introduce today's speaker, Dr. Rima Dada. Dr. Rima is presently working as professor at All India Institute of Medical Sciences, AIIMS, New Delhi, where she established molecular reproduction and genetics facility. She is actively engaged in teaching, research, and genetic diagnostics services. Dr. Rima is a fellow of National Academy of Medical Sciences, International Medical Science Academy, Academy of Standards and Ratings, and Indian Academy of Biomedical Sciences. Dr. Rima is pursuing research on genetic aspects of infertility, reproductive failure, recurrent ART failure, and idiopathic recurrent spontaneous abortion and childhood cancers. For the last 8 years, she is working on the impact of yoga on the genome and epigenome. Dr. Rima has received several national and international awards, the ICMR National Award for Outstanding Contribution in the field of genetics of infertility. She has also received Young Scientist Award at Second European American Course in Clinical Genetics in Croatia, GP Talwar Gold Medal, and Best Paper Award at Indian Society for Research in Reproduction meeting, and Best Paper Award at Annual Congress of Indian Society of Andrology 3 times. She has delivered 5 orations and several plenary lectures and over 85 invited lectures at various meetings and conferences. Her research on genetics of glaucoma is amongst the top 2% in the world. She won the awards at American Society of Andrology meeting for her work on genetics of reproductive disorders, and also Best Paper Award at International Symposium on Genetics of Infertility at Salt Lake City, USA in 2010. In 2019 and 20, she received the award for Excellence in Innovation, Excellence and Innovation in Yoga Research at Symposium on Yoga Research at Kripalu Center, Albany, USA, and over 24 awards for her work on yoga in complex diseases like glaucoma, depression, male factor infertility, aging, and rheumatoid arthritis. Dr. Rima has published 166 original indexed articles of high impact, 65 chapters in books, and DBT workshop manual, and over 190 abstracts in American, European, and international meetings or journals. We welcome you, Dr. Rima ma'am, to the talk number 41 of our 3rd edition of Agora webinar series organized by Srinarayana College, Kollam. Over to you, Dr. Rima.
Thank you so much for a kind introduction. And it's a pleasure to present my work here. And I would be speaking to you on complex diseases and the role of yoga in disease management as well as in promotion of health. Now, let me tell you that the most common set of diseases that we encounter today is the non-communicable diseases and the complex diseases or the lifestyle diseases. And this has really resulted in a very steep increase in the incidence of these diseases because we find that there is a rapid change in our lifestyle. So how do we manage them? And in this age of super specialization, what is the role of yoga? So in the course of this lecture, I'll show you that how complex diseases can be managed wonderfully and by this mind-body intervention like yoga. And then what are complex diseases? As I told you, these are diseases in which you have a very important role. So they're of our lifestyle, our habits, our eating, and whether we are sedentary, whether we are having physical activity. So these are diseases in which there is an interplay between the genes and the environment. So they are complex. So there is not the effect of a single gene. So they don't segregate in families like like they do in monogenic disorders. So we have the effect of many genes, and each gene has a small additive effect. And along with that, there is an effect of the environment. And thus these diseases are known as complex diseases. Now, in this age of super specialization, it's been seen that if you have infertility, you will be treated by a doctor who will look at only the ovaries, the uterus, the fallopian tube, or the testes, and the duct system. But it's important to know that majority of these complex diseases or any other disease, they have a very big psychosomatic component, and thus they need to be dealt with a system which targets both the mind and the body. And yoga is one such modality. And it's important to know that yoga took its birth in India. And though Maharishi Patanjali just compiled what was already there about 5,000 years ago, it's important to know that it is a profound science. It's a technique And it's such an important technique whose ultimate aim is the union of one's consciousness with the universal consciousness, and helps to bring about a union between the mind, body, and the soul. And during this ultimate aim of yoga, we find that there are so many profound benefits in terms of decrease in stress, decrease in the levels of stress, anxiety, depression, management of so many diseases, which are just small, the beneficial effects which occur during the practice of yoga. Now, when we talk of yoga, we mean three things. It's the asanas and the regulated breathing practices like pranayama, as well as meditation. Right. So, what is meditation? It is a state of being attentive to the present moment in a non-judgmental way, with awareness of breathing. It's the state in which we try to focus to defocus ourselves, and through yoga, we achieve voluntary control over involuntary functions. So yoga is actually a way of life. It's not that we perform a set of asanas and then we just lead whatever we do, we eat non-veg or whatever. But it's important to know that we practice non-violence in our thought, in our actions. And these are the 8 limbs of yoga. So as I told you, in the recent decades, there has been a very steep increase in the incidence of these complex lifestyle diseases. And majority of the diseases that are actually killing people nowadays are the cardiovascular diseases, which are actually killing more people than even cancer. In addition to that, there has been a steep increase in the number of metabolic diseases like diabetes mellitus, then you have hypertension, then you have cancer. There's an increase in the incidence of autoimmune diseases with an increase in the levels of stress in individuals. So how has these changes been brought about, and how is there a deterioration in our health? And why are we not managing our, our whole of our health system is targeted at treating diseases rather than managing health and bringing about wellness. So I just would like to tell you that in the recent decades, and through these, as we have evolved, we've seen that we have actually shifted from a hunter-gatherer society to a society which is largely sedentary. We have shifted from having foods which were growing on the land, which were the unprocessed, unrefined foods which are fruits, berries, and moving for 13 to 18 kilometers a day to a society which is largely inactive, sedentary, and just sitting on our computers and having a lot of fast foods. Now, WHO actually recommends that we have about 150 minutes of moderate to intense physical activity per week, or about 75 minutes of intense physical activity. But it's been seen that about 30% of the world's population is largely inactive, and this population is actually growing. And we also see that there has been a rapid change in our lifestyle, and not only that, our dietary patterns have changed. And we are seeing that more and more of us are indulging in these kinds of foods which are rich in trans fats, salts, sugars. This is the standard American diet, or the deadly American diet, and it's a diet which is highly inflammatory. We can see that it is very tasty, but it is full of coloring agents, flavoring agents, and a large, very high in sugars, salts, which are so detrimental to our health. But the media and the intensity, the advertisement, that the more you eat outside, the more discounts they will give you. And it's important to know that as we have seen that more and more people are eating out. And so we see that as the amount of time spent cooking at home, there was a study which has really shown that as the time spent cooking at home decreases, the obesity levels increase. And it's important to know that that's why today's population, especially the younger population, they are actually facing, there's an epidemic of obesity. And we find that these are the individuals who are chronically hungry. They are obese, but they're chronically hungry and they are nutritionally depleted individuals. And therefore, we also find that there is an increase in the disorders which you're finding among children, like attention deficit disorders. They have depression, and it's been now directly correlated that when children have fast food the previous day, the next day they get lower scores. So it's very, very important to understand that it's our change in the lifestyle. We have become largely sedentary. We have started having these foods which are rich in trans fats, salt, sugars. These are highly processed foods. These are packaged, refined foods, which are very, very detrimental to our health. So all these complex diseases, which are also known as lifestyle diseases, be it cancer, be it autoimmune disease, be it infertility, not all types of infertility, but a large chunk of cases of infertility, be it rheumatoid arthritis, be it depression, and also accelerated aging, which is setting the stage of these complex diseases setting in much earlier. Before, about 20 to 30 years back, these diseases used to occur when we were 65 or 70 years old. But now we see that people as young as 20, 25 are having heart attacks, myocardial infarction, they are having hypertension, and the strokes which were occurring at a much later stage in life. Now it's been seen that these complex diseases have some common underlying mechanisms. These are chronic inflammation, chronic activation of the sympathetic nervous system. This is a system which actually prepares us for fight and flight. Then there is persistent activation of the hypothalamo-pituitary adrenal axis. There is reduced diversity of the gut microbiome. And it's very important to know that we are an ecosystem of about 50 trillion cells, which are our cells, as well as the cells of the bacterial genomes, which are found in our gut. And we coexist beautifully. But when we have a diet which is very rich in trans fats, salts, artificial sugars, and very high in sugars, and when we have stress, our sleeping patterns are disturbed, it actually disturbs the gut microbiome. And it's been seen that disruption of the gut microbiome and its reduced diversity is actually responsible for a large number of autoimmune diseases, as well as for many disorders like even depression. That one of the main factors when you have chronic inflammation is oxidative stress, apoptosis, dysregulated blood flow, dysregulated and aberrant gene expression, shorter telomeres, which means that we are aging much faster. Stress, anxiety, depression, and a dysregulated immune system are actually the underlying mechanisms which are actually responsible for these complex diseases. So as I just told you how, and I'm now going to explain to you how yoga, and so it's asanas, pranayam, as well as meditation play a key role in managing these diseases. And I would like to tell you, whenever we talk of yoga, we just think of the asanas, but it's important to remember that asanas form a very, very small percentage in yoga. It's just about 1 to 1.5 or to 2%. The main aim of asanas is just that your body is upright and the spine has maintains its curvature, so that we can attain a state and be in a meditative state, which is the main aim of doing yoga. So I will now talk about different diseases and how yoga can be used in the management. So first thing I'm going to be talking to you is about male factor infertility. It's a complex and a common lifestyle disease. And what we initially used to think that it's a problem of the female, but it's important to remember that it actually affects about, in about half the cases, the problem is actually in the male. This is very, very important because whenever there's a couple who's infertile, and we've been working on idiopathic male factor infertility, in idiopathic cases of recurrent spontaneous abortions, and in idiopathic cases of recurrent congenital malformations, in these cases, we totally rule out the female factor. And so it's important to know that in a large percentage of these cases, in approximately half the cases, the problem is actually lying in the male. So when we have these cases, we first of all do a semen analysis to classify whether a person is azoospermic, no sperms, or is there a low sperm count, or is there a low sperm count along with abnormal morphology of sperms and impaired motility, or is there a group of people who have normal sperm count, normal motility, normal morphology, but yet they are infertile? Now, in these group of individuals who have no sperm or low sperm count, they have genetic abnormalities. But these group of men who are normospermic and yet infertile, these are classified as unexplained male factor infertility. Now, I would like to tell you that I will today focus on these group of men which are normospermic with unexplained infertility. But even in these group of men which have a genetic basis of infertility, it's important to know that it is oxidative stress which is actually resulting in chromosomal abnormalities, as well as resulting in YQ microdeletions, which are the underlying basis for these oligo and azoospermic cases. But it's important to understand that in this group of individuals, these people, when they go for counseling, when they go to a gynecologist, what do? They refer them for assisted conception to go in for test tube babies. And I'll show you during this study that when these individuals who appear to have all parameters normal as per WHO guidelines, you actually find that they have higher levels of DNA damage. So when such sperm are used for assisted conception, it not only affects the health of the offspring, and that is why nature made them infertile, but it's also important to understand that the next generation who's conceived by this technique would also need more of the assisted conception technique, right? So that would increase the incidence of infertility. So now let's see the common, I told you they all share a common underlying mechanisms. Now let's see, so we see that again, the standard American diet, smoking, excessive use of cell phone, a sedentary diet, high intake of non-veg food, alcohol consumption, all results in high levels of inflammation and oxidative stress. Now, I would like to highlight here that it's been emphasized that now even WHO has declared that red meat kills and processed meat kills faster. Now, it's important to remember that when you have non-veg food, now when these animals are grazing on areas which are these areas where you have put DDT, DDE, now these chemicals mimic estrogens, they're anti-androgenic. And therefore, they affect the development of the male fetus, the genitourinary system. And this actually results in the development of male babies, which have not only low sperm count, but they have a higher incidence of genitourinary abnormalities. So what I have told you till now is that there are various factors. For example, it could be, I will just explain why the sperm is most vulnerable to these factors. So there are lifestyle factors. Now people are delaying the age of marriage and having children later, but it's also so advanced paternal age, psychological stress, excessive use of cell phone, exposure to various pollutants actually causes oxidative stress, which is a condition in which there is an imbalance in the free radicals that are being produced and the antioxidant defense mechanisms. And this results in damage to the nuclear and the mitochondrial DNA. Damage to the nuclear and the mitochondrial DNA results in the production of a base, which is known as 8-hydroxy-2-deoxyguanosine. And this base is actually going to result in production of, this base actually results in mutations and epimutations. So the presence of this base is very, very detrimental, not only to the father's health, and that's why infertile men have a higher incidence of gonadal and extragonadal tumors. But in addition to that, it also affects the health of the offspring. As I'll tell you in my talk, that the sperm have hardly because they are the genome is very tightly packaged, you find that the sperm is not able to repair its DNA damage, and because of that, you actually find that the DNA damage persists after fertilization. It depends upon the oocyte to clear the DNA damage, but if the damage is a lot, the DNA damage is not cleared, and after fertilization, this base is present in every cell of the body of the embryo, and therefore it results in more mutations and epimutations. In addition to that, oxidative stress damages the telomeres, fragments the DNA, and this is the cause for not only infertility, but congenital malformations, recurrent spontaneous abortions, dominant genetic diseases, complex neuropsychiatric disorders like autism, depression in children, as well as childhood cancers. So what WHO says is that we must have 5 servings of fruits and vegetables, and the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine says we need 10 servings of fruits and vegetables. Now I'll just show you how yoga is able to help in these conditions. So our studies have shown that a large percentage of men have high free radical levels. That means the sperm is actually encountering seminal oxidative stress. And because of the seminal oxidative stress, you find that the sperm is undergoing damage. So we assess the DNA damage by 2 techniques. One is by comet assay, where we can study the, you can see the fragmentation Okay, we can see the fragmentation and the fluorescence. You can quantify the fluorescence in the region of the head, which shows good quality DNA. And if you have sperm with large tail, it shows the fragmented DNA. And you can see in this lower panel, there are large number of sperm which have long tail as compared to the top panel, where the majority of the fluorescence is lying in the region of the head, showing good quality DNA, versus this where you find sperm with large tails indicating a lot of damage to the DNA. We also quantify the DNA damage by flow cytometry, and we can see here that the damaged DNA here, each dot represents the sperm, and the number of sperm towards the x-axis indicate the number of sperm with the damaged DNA. Now, this oxidative stress actually also targets the telomeres. The telomeres are the biological clocks, and they are also known as the guardian of our genome. They are like the plastic ends of shoelaces. So when these plastic ends are frayed, the shoelaces tend to wither faster. And our studies have shown that optimal levels of free radicals are required to maintain the telomere length. And this shows us that we should not use antioxidants indiscriminately. Now, it's also important to remember, like when I was telling you, since during the development of the sperm is shedding majority of its antioxidants, so that because it develops a compact head, and therefore it has minimal cytosolic antioxidants to protect itself from the oxidative stress. In addition to that, the sperm nuclear size is 1/6 the size of any other somatic cell, and therefore it is very compact. But so majority of its DNA is packaged by certain proteins like transition proteins and protamides, and therefore this DNA is inert, both transcriptionally and translationally. And you'll find that—
Madam, excuse me, madam. I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm Professor Jayachandran.
So what I was trying to highlight here is that what people do is they indiscriminately take antioxidants. So what we need to do is we have to monitor the antioxidants, because you need certain levels of free radicals to maintain the adequate length of the telomeres. Because if the telomeres shorten, the sperm will stop dividing, and the telomere length is passed on to the offspring, and the embryo with these with shorter these telomeres, then the cleavage rate is slowed down. So we were able to establish that what is the level of damage in the sperm beyond which a couple is not able to achieve spontaneous conception. And we found that when the DNA damage in the sperm is beyond 30, a couple is not able to conceive spontaneously. We have also quantified the level of this base, which is 8-hydroxy-2-deoxyguanosine. Now, what's the importance of quantifying this base? This base actually tells you that what is the kind of damage in the sperm DNA. If the level of this base is high, it shows that the majority of the damage in the sperm is oxidative in nature. And oxidative damage, as I told you, correlates with our unhealthy lifestyle. So the people who smoke, the people who consume alcohol, or they are exposed to these environmental pollutants like insecticides and pesticides, they have higher levels of this base. And this base is actually known to cause mutations. And in the sperm, they will cause de novo germline mutations. And that would actually be, and it has been seen that 80 to 90% de novo germline mutations occur in the sperm DNA. So they are the cause of autosomal dominant genetic disorders, as well as they are responsible for childhood cancers and also for genetic as well as epigenetic diseases. So in our study, we found that the fathers, now we also did this study in the fathers, there were reports that children who are conceived from assisted conception, their children have a higher incidence of certain cancers. So what we did, we actually took up children who had sporadic cancers. The cancer is not running in the family. And we studied the DNA quality of the fathers of these children. And we find that the level of this base is very high as compared to the fathers of children who had healthy children with no cancer. So you can see that the high level of this base is actually responsible for de novo germline mutations and epimutations. We also quantified the level of this base in the children with cancer. And you can see that in the children with cancer, the levels of this base is so high as compared to healthy children. And this is actually responsible for post-zygotic mutations. And that therefore is the cause for childhood cancers and many other diseases which are set in later. So the poor quality of sperm DNA sets the stage for diseases later in children. So it affects the lifelong health of those children. So I've already talked about this, that we studied the fathers of children with these cancers who had sporadic. So we excluded cases where there was a positive family history. We only took cases which were negative for the mutation. So we excluded cases where there was a mutation in the sperms or in the sperm DNA or the ova, but we only took cases where there were father and mother were negative for these mutations. And so this was a de novo mutation, most probably which arose during the in the sperm DNA, or because the sperm DNA is such a poor quality, it is arising post-zygote. These are post-zygotic mutations. So this is the retinoblastoma. It is one of the most common childhood cancers. And you can see that the levels of ROS, normally they are less than 25, are very high. And so is the DNA damage, which is between 8 to 21%. Then what we did, these group of men then underwent yoga intervention, and we assessed all the parameters again. You can see that post yoga intervention, you find there's the sperm count changes, but that's not important because there is a lot of variation in sperm count. But you can see that there's an improvement in the progressive motility and a steep decline in the reactive oxygen species or the free radical levels. Now, while we were being told to take fruits and vegetables, is because fruits and vegetables, 10 servings, who can afford in India? You can see that because they increase the total antioxidant capacity. But you can see here that yoga, when these were randomized controlled trials, you can see that there was a group of individuals who did yoga and meditation, and the ones that did not show any change in the total antioxidant capacity. But the group that did yoga and meditation, did practice yoga, you can see that there is a significant increase in the total antioxidant capacity. So yoga is impacting the genome, affecting the expression levels of genes, which are increasing the antioxidant genes, and that is increasing the total antioxidant capacity. Then we also studied the expression levels of these longevity genes, which are the sirtuins. And the sirtuin genes are the genes which are known as the longevity genes, and these are histone deacetylases. And this was the first study to show that sirtuins increase post-practice of yoga. Now, earlier studies showed that if you take 100 glasses of red wine, it caused an increase in resveratrol, which caused an increase in the sirtuin levels. But this is the first study to show that if you practice yoga, independent of red wine intake or caloric restriction, you can increase your sirtuin levels. In addition to that, post-practice of yoga, we quantified the level of this base, which induces both mutations and epimutations, and you can see that there's a significant decline in the levels of this base. So it's so important that we have to understand that yoga is impacting the genome. It's decreasing the oxidative DNA damage, and there is a decrease in the level of this base. Majority of the antioxidants that we take are not able to reach the nucleus at therapeutic doses. But yoga is, because it is increasing the expression of genes which are the coding for the antioxidants, it is able to decrease the oxidative DNA damage in the sperm. We also find, as I told you, the telomeres were shorter, and the maintenance of telomeres is because of either the oxidative stress levels should come down, and also the telomerase activity goes up, which helps to maintain the telomere length. And we can see that there is an increase in the telomerase activity post-practice of yoga. No other thing can increase telomerase activity, but yoga also increases telomerase activity. Now, this is very important. We believe that male infertility is testicular aging. So, as a whole, not only it is reducing testicular aging, but it is also reducing our biological age. So even if we are 70 years old, if we practice yoga, we just may be around 55 or 50 years old, or even younger, depending upon how sincerely we practice yoga. So we also did a microarray analysis. Here, each dot represents a gene to find which of the genes are dysregulated. And we found a large number of genes were dysregulated. But post practice of yoga, you can see that this is the before practicing yoga. These are the levels in the controls. And you can actually see that post practice of yoga, the levels of the genes are also getting, the expression levels are getting normalized. We also studied the sperm epigenome. You can see here. And we found that there were over about 400 sites which were showing differential methylation. And we find that after practice of yoga, there are about 170 sites which are hypermethylated. That means those genes are silent. These are the genes which cause inflammation. And those genes which are promoting the sperm development, differentiation, promoting fertilization, those genes get hypomethylated. So again, not only in infertility, but in recurrent spontaneous abortions and recurrent implantation failure post-practice of yoga, there is a normalization in the transcript levels. And we also found that the DNA quality is self-improving. So as I told you, the number of sperm towards the x-axis are the one with the damaged DNA. And you can see after 6 months of practice, the number of sperm towards the x-axis actually reduces, showing that practice of yoga is decreasing the DNA damage and helping to maintain the genomic integrity. Now I'll talk about another disease, which is the autoimmune disease. So I'm just giving you one example, but it impacts other autoimmune diseases, which I share the common architecture, which is setting the stage for, because these are complex diseases. Now, rheumatoid arthritis is one of the most severe, painful, progressive arthritis, which has both articular symptoms as well as extra-articular symptoms. It affects the lungs, the heart, the brain, the skin. Now, this is a very severe chronic progressive arthritis, and again, a psychosomatic disease, because the people who come to us with this, because it's a progressive disorder, they are not able to perform the daily chores, so they need a caretaker, and they know that with time, they're going to get worse and worse, and the drugs that they take, they have so many side effects. So now I'll show you what are the results of our study. Now, again, these were randomized controlled trial. You can see that the disease activity score post-practice of yoga showed a significant decline in the group that practiced yoga, whereas in the group that did not practice yoga, there was no change. When we assess their health assessment, we find that there is an improvement. And you can also see this is a Beck depression inventory, which helps us to study the severity of depression. And you can see that the group that practiced yoga, there was a significant decline in the severity of depression. Now, how does yoga cause a decline in the severity of rheumatoid arthritis? So we find that in rheumatoid arthritis, there's an increase in the C-reactive protein. That's the protein you also find when you're studying COVID. And there's a decrease in ESR. And normally for decreasing this, we are given steroids. Now you can see post-practice of yoga, there's a significant decline in these acute phase reactants. Then we find that in these autoimmune diseases, there is an exaggerated response of the body. I'm just mentioning COVID here because in COVID also you find that there is an IL-6, which the levels of which are very high, and it causes the cytokine storm. So it's important to know here in yoga, we find that there are a lot of inflammatory cytokines. I'm giving you an example of one of each. Now these inflammatory cytokines are increased. Now the interleukin-17, this actually causes the articular symptoms, okay, the joint issues. And you can see that there's a significant decline in the interleukin-17. The extra-articular symptoms are because of interleukin-6. And you can see that the interleukin-6 levels go down post-practice of yoga. So the extra-articular symptoms also become milder. And we find that there is this transcription factor, the tumor necrosis factor alpha, and you find that the levels also show a significant decline. And this factor is actually responsible for the proliferation of osteoclasts, which cause bone erosions, and synovial hyperplasia. And therefore, you find that there is a decrease in this. So we see that not only is there a decrease in the inflammatory cytokines and factors which are causing bony erosions, but in addition to that, we also studied a panel of the anti-inflammatory genes and what is the expression levels. And we find that the expression of anti-inflammatory genes goes up. In addition to that, in these cases, sometimes there is a genetic basis. And for example, the non-classical HLA-G molecule is decreased, and that sets the stage for this autoimmune disease. And we find that post practice of yoga, the levels of this HLA-G molecule increases. Now, what's important is that even if these cases have a genetic basis of developing this autoimmune disease, there are some insertion deletion polymorphisms which are found in HLA-G gene, and because of that, the levels are lower. Irrespective of the presence of these genotypes, you find that these individuals show an increase in the HLA-G levels, and this helps to reestablish immunological tolerance and gets the person into molecular remission. We also find that markers of oxidative stress, like the ROS levels, show a significant decline. There's an increase in the total antioxidant capacity and a decrease in the level of this base, which is a marker of oxidative DNA damage. Again, it is showing you, be it any disease, autoimmune disease, for example, rheumatoid or infertility, or I'll just talk of others, they're all having a common underlying their mechanism. So they share this mechanism. And it's been seen that when you have infertility, you also have where there's a higher incidence of cardiovascular disease, there's a higher incidence of stroke, there's a higher incidence of cancer. So they are all having shared underlying mechanisms. And you can see that to understand why is there an improvement in these cases, why is there a decrease in the oxidative stress, we also studied this mitochondrial integrity. And these studies were the first in the world to show that yoga can improve the mitochondrial integrity. You can see that there's an improvement in the mitochondrial membrane potential. In addition to, for example, this study has recently come out in March 2021, where we've shown that a number of genes which maintain the mitochondrial integrity, which are helping in mitochondrial biogenesis, they show a significant increase post-practice of yoga. And the level of this base, the nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide, goes up. Now, this is one very critical base which is required for maintaining the crosstalk between the nucleus and the mitochondrial DNA. And the levels of it which decline with age, and therefore with that you find that the ATP synthesis by the DNA decreases and free radical production increases. An increase in the level of this base actually helps in improving the mitochondrial integrity. So we also found that there's an improvement in the mitochondrial biogenesis. So the number of mitochondrial DNA increases. So now I'll just talk of the effect on primary open angle glaucoma, which is also known as Kala Motia. Now in glaucoma, now this is again an autoimmune disease, which is a progressive disease, and if untreated, the person becomes blind. It is the second leading cause of blindness. Now, it is believed that the only risk factor, the modifiable risk factor in glaucoma is intraocular pressure. So the doctor tries to decrease all factors to decrease the intraocular pressure. But recent studies have shown it's not only the intraocular pressure, but oxidative stress, dysregulated blood flow, hypoxia, enhanced apoptosis of the retinal ganglion cells, all leads to glaucoma. So we studied these patients of primary open angle glaucoma, and our studies, which were initially done in the blood and later in trabecular meshwork, showed that there was a decrease in the expression of genes which were causing enhanced apoptosis of retinal ganglion cells, the genes causing inflammation, the genes causing increased deposition of collagen in the trabecular meshwork, which impeded the flow of the aqueous, and there was an increase in the expression of genes which were anti-inflammatory, those genes which were helping in synaptogenesis, which were helping in neurogenesis, and were providing the neurotrophic factors for the growth and the nourishment of the retinal ganglion neurons. This study recently came out in the American Journal of Ophthalmology, and after this, they have made meditation as a part of management of primary open angle glaucoma. So we have not, I just showed you a small panel. We've also studied the levels of the nitric oxide synthase, which is actually very, very important. And it's seen that increased levels, there's an increase in fold change, actually results in increase in the blood flow to the retinal ganglion cells. So we see that when you, just to summarize the findings in glaucoma, we find there's an increase in expression of genes which are anti-inflammatory. There's increase in expression of genes which are helping in the flow of the aqueous humor, decrease in expression of genes which are helping to deposit these collagen which impair drainage, decreased expression of genes which are enhancing the apoptosis of retinal ganglion cells, and increase in the expression of genes which are promoting retinogenesis as well as the providing nourishment to the retinal ganglion cells. Now I talk of depression. As I told you that comorbid depression is one of the symptoms which occurs with majority of complex diseases, but also we are facing a large chunk of our population, not only in India, but worldwide, which is experiencing stress, anxiety, depression. In India, it's said that 36 to 40% of our population faces depression per se, that is major depressive disorder. And again, these were randomized controlled trials which actually showed that there is a decrease in the severity of depression. This is in gray. So there were two groups, one which was doing yoga and meditation with standard antidepressant drugs, and the ones which were not practicing yoga and meditation. And you can see that the group that practiced meditation, which is in gray, showed a significant decline in the severity of depression. Now, why is there a decrease in the severity of depression? Again, these are randomized controlled trials. You can see that there's increased expression of brain-derived neurotrophic factor, DHEA, which is known as the fountain of youth hormone. It's a brain vitamin. Increased levels of serotonin, which is the feel-good hormone, and increase in the levels of melatonin, which helps to maintain the sleep-wake cycle. Is one of the key molecules and a very strong antioxidants. The highest levels of this melatonin are found in mitochondria, and therefore it also helps to maintain the mitochondrial integrity. Now, I would just like to tell you that whenever there is stress damages parts of the brain like the hippocampus, which helps in memory. And therefore you find that when there are periods of stress, sometimes we say we are becoming forgetful, we don't remember certain things because stress damages the neurons in the hippocampus. But and because there is increase in the levels of cortisol, and cortisol has an inverse relationship with total antioxidant capacity and also an inverse correlation with the levels of various factors which promote neuroplasticity. Now, it's very, very important to understand that just by practice of yoga, you can increase the levels of these factors which promote neuroplasticity, like brain-derived neurotrophic factor. You can see that there's an increase in the expression. The level of this DHEA goes up. Now, majority of the antidepressants are serotonin analogs. They're selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, and they have so many side effects. And these are the drugs which are maximally sold in the market. But you can see that if you practice yoga, you can actually increase the expression of this, you can increase the expression of this gene serotonin, and you can see that there's increase in the levels of serotonin. And this melatonin, which maintains the sleep-wake cycle, the circadian rhythm, also goes up. And this is very important because people who have depression, you find that they have disturbances in their sleep, and because of this, there is a disturbance in their hormonal milieu, because those are also following a circadian rhythm, and this further disturbs their various metabolic processes. And therefore, if you practice yoga, you're able to help not only increase the levels of your factors which promote neuroplasticity, and it's important, this factor highlights that when you practice yoga, you can bring about functional changes in the brain, which can be recorded now by fMRI. And not only that, not only are there structural changes, functional changes are there, definitely, you can already track them and record them, but there are also structural changes. You find that people who practice yoga, there's increase in the white matter, there is increase in the cortical thickness, there is increase in neurogenesis, especially in the hippocampus, in the dentate gyrus, in the cerebellum. So it's very, very important that not only people who have depression or who have complex diseases, they should practice yoga, but people of any age can practice yoga. And it's so important, especially in this time of the pandemic when we are told to stay indoors. If we adopt yoga, you just need to learn it once and practice it sincerely and do every day at least 20 to 30 minutes. There is such a profound change in our life. It has such a tremendous transformative power. And as so many children may be hearing it today, let me tell you that if you practice yoga, do meditation and pranayama and meditation, and when the factors like BDNF, DHEA increase, this not only increases and decreases depression, but it increases concentration, cognition. It helps you maintain calm. It increases your alertness, agility. You are more attentive. Your learning capabilities increase. You become more mindful, you become more aware. So whatever, suppose you have to study something and it takes you 4 hours, you will be able to do it maybe in 20 to 30 minutes because it increases your attention, your focus. It makes you more emotionally resilient. And I think such studies really scientifically prove the need for each one of us, especially in these stressful times, and also to increase our productivity, to increase our output, to do better in our studies or in any sphere of life, that we do adopt yoga into our life. In addition to that, you can see that again, people who have depression, they age earlier. So it has been seen that their biological age, for example, they may be just 30 years old, but they actually, their biological age may be 50 because they are aging at a much faster rate, because depression is associated with oxidative stress. You can see they have higher levels, but post practice of yoga, it goes down. There's again, as I told you, increase in the total antioxidant capacity, and you can see there's an increase in the telomerase activity and the telomere length is maintained. In addition to that, you can see that cortisol, which is the stress hormone, goes down, the level of inflammatory markers goes down, and the mitochondrial integrity is improving, and so are the sirtuins, the expression of sirtuins. We also did a microarray analysis, and we found that number of genes which are maintaining the circadian rhythm also show an increase. And in these individuals, there's a lower expression of genes which are maintaining the genomic integrity, the tumor suppressor gene. I've just shown one example, that is RB1. But if you practice yoga, the expression level actually increases. And here I wanted to show you that irrespective of your genotype, whether you have susceptibility genotypes, yoga is able to impact all the categories. And we find that majority of the cases, there are about 60% cases who practice yoga versus just 33% who were on the drug group, actually showed a decrease in the severity of depression, and they had higher and longer periods of remission. And all the 4 domains of quality of life showed a significant improvement post-practice of yoga. As I told you, that one of the causes of complex lifestyle diseases is accelerated aging. Your biological age may be much higher than your chronological age. And we found that this is also one of the first studies to show that if you practice yoga, you can reduce the rate of aging. And you know that there are millions of dollars being spent to get products which can reduce your rate of aging. But if you practice yoga free of cost, you can actually reduce the rate at which you are aging. So you may have a longer lifespan and a healthier lifespan. And because you can see that there is decrease in the oxidative stress, which is one of the main factors which causes telomere shortening. The telomere length is maintained, the telomere telomerase activity goes up, the level of inflammatory cytokines goes down, and the level of various factors which promote neuroplasticity goes up. Now, what happens when people live longer? They have a higher incidence of not only complex lifestyle diseases, but because they have inflammation, there's an earlier onset, they have Alzheimer's, dementia, there's a cognitive decline. But when they practice yoga, you can actually have a much healthier body, and you can have an ageless mind. And there would be a much later onset or a very delayed onset of disorders like dementia and Alzheimer's. So I would like to tell you that yoga not only is impacting the nuclear DNA, but it's also impacting the mitochondrial DNA, which is the main producer of free radicals, which is setting the stage for the damage to further damage to the mitochondrial and the nuclear DNA, resulting in production of this 8-hydroxy-2-deoxyguanosine, which actually causes mutations and epimutations. And yoga increases the mitochondrial copy number, improves the mitochondrial this oxidative phosphorylation, these cytochrome oxidase, which is helping in the ATP production, decreases oxidative stress, increases this critical molecule, which is important for calcium signaling, circadian rhythm, maintaining the nuclear mitochondrial crosstalk, improves the mitochondrial potential, and thus improves the mitochondrial integrity. Thus, as I told you, that there are a number of factors which cause complex diseases, like for chronic inflammation, oxidative stress, so high levels of stress, anxiety, depression, which cause chronic activation of the sympathetic nervous system. I did not talk of the gut microbiome, but it's critical, as I told you, that there are 8 limbs of yoga, and one of them is to have You know, our ahar also, what we consume is very important, and a plant-based, whole plant-based diet is very, very important to nurture the gut microbiome and maintain its diversity. Then the dysregulated immune system and a dysregulated gene expression and a higher biological age, which is indicated by shorter telomeres, are the common factors which results in complex diseases. And if we follow all the 8 limbs of yoga, and yoga is actually a way of life, and eat a healthy plant-based diet, unrefined, unprocessed, unpackaged, we see that by this lifestyle, by adopting yoga into our lifestyle, we can actually decrease the levels of stress, anxiety, depression, regulate our epigenome, regulate the blood flow, maintain immune homeostasis, reduce the rate of apoptosis, increase parasympathetic dominance, which helps in rest, relaxation, repair, maintain the telomere length, decrease inflammation, and decrease oxidative stress, and thereby reduce the incidence of complex lifestyle diseases. And thus, it's very, very important that we integrate yoga into our life to have a healthier life, to live longer, and to live a happy, healthy life with an ageless mind. And thus, we need to practice yoga as just as we practice dental hygiene. Just a small daily practice of yoga can profoundly impact your health because it has such a tremendous transformative power. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you.
The research is very interesting.
Thank you, ma'am.
We have 22 questions waiting in the Q&A box.
Oh my God, Acha, let me see.
Write to the participants.
Okay, I have to write to them?
Q&A. Could you see it?
Okay, yeah.
Lower panel.
Okay, I can send you the protocols which we have for rheumatoid arthritis, for DNA damage, for infertility, for depression. I'll send you these protocols. Some people have asked for that. They have asked me how to avoid rheumatic fever. This I would not be able to guide you because I'm not working on rheumatic fever. And it's an acute infection, so that needs to be managed. I think they give penicillin. I mean, I think I'm not the right person to guide for this. They've written there is a misconception that yoga means Hindutva. No, yoga does not mean Hindutva. Yoga is a profound science. It's a technique. For example, gravity does not belong to Einstein. Similarly, yoga does not belong to anyone. It's the science which was originated in India from our sages, right? And it was Agastya Muni who actually spread it in the whole of India, especially in South India. And therefore, this is a misconception, and this is a wrong thing which is spread by certain people, that it means it's Hindutva, and therefore some groups do not practice it. It's just a profound science of inner well-being. And I think everyone should practice yoga. Where did I don't think there's any mention that it is a particular group. Yoga transcends any caste, creed, race, and it can be practiced by one and all, whether a person is disabled, whether a person is having special abilities, or whether it's a male, female, with pain, without pain, with limb, without limb. Yoga can be practiced by one and all, and there's nothing that it is correlated to Hindutva or anything. Okay, how can yoga and meditation help to rectify energy imbalances of micro chakras? Wow. See, we have to remember that what we are actually studying now are just small byproducts of yoga, like improvement in our health, improvement in various diseases. But the impact of yoga is not limited to this. We all know that what we see, the body that we see, which is the Annamaya Kosh, the one which is by eating, that Annamaya. And beyond that, we have a Pranmaya Kosha, we have Manomaya, then Vigyanmaya, and the Anandmaya Kosha. So we have to remember that when we do pranayam, actually it's breathing, so it's Shwasayam. And when you do, but this is also helping to charge our pran shakti, the energy. Right, and therefore this helps to balance your chakras. Let me see more questions.
Please scroll down.
Yeah. So, see, I'll just tell you, somebody has written, yogis like Sadhguru Jagi Vasudev have the opinion that meditation is not advisable for young girls. Do you have the same? Now, let me just tell you that, see, for example, just let me tell you that when we have people with depression, we tell them to do more of active asanas like Surya Namaskar rather than meditation, because once they start meditating again, their mind starts wandering. The thing is, when the meditation that we make the people do is just focus on their breath. And it's very important to tell children how to do Anum Vilom. If you teach them properly, they will benefit, right? Because it will increase their concentration power. And it's so important that children are taught, but they should be taught by by a trained yoga instructor. And it's important, again, I would like to highlight here that when you are practicing yoga under a trained instructor, he will ask you that whether you have any particular problem. For example, if a person has glaucoma, then when you practice Kapal Bharti, you should not be doing it forcibly because your blood pressure will increase, right? Any forward bending postures will increase your intraocular pressure. So even people with blood pressure should not be doing Kapal Bharti forcibly. Do it very, very gently. So it's very important that before you start practicing, you just discuss with your yoga instructor and he will guide you what has to be done. For example, if you have some back ailment, which asanas should be avoided, which ones should be done, all this can be discussed. Prophylaxis means you can prevent, to prevent. How can you prevent cataract in early ages? See, so there is something known as congenital cataract. One of my students was working on it. There are several genes which cause cataract, but usually cataract is the opacification of the media of the lens. And because it becomes harder, it cannot change its refractive power. And usually it occurs at a later age. But they say a healthy plant-based diet can, reduce the rate of developing much. It happens much later, but it usually happens because there is increased deposition of lens fibers, certain crystalline proteins, and the levels of hydration of the lens also decreases. See, if you have some cardiovascular issues, like somebody has mentioned, they have some valve problem, those issues actually need surgical interventions, or they need to actually go and show a cardiovascular surgeon. Now, for various cardiovascular diseases, yoga is very helpful, but when you have such problems where there's a lot of level of regurgitation and beyond a certain point, you would need some surgical intervention. One must discuss. Somebody has asked that I have open angle glaucoma for last 9 years and my IOP range is always a little higher. It's about 24. Can you suggest what type of yoga? Definitely, I will send the list. Again, I would like to tell it's Harish Joy that you should practice yoga, but in this yoga, you should practice mainly pranayam and meditation with a focus on breathing. Do not do any forward bending and do not do Kapal Bharti because it will cause increase in pressure. Focus more on Anulom Vilom as well as focus more on Brahmari and Lom Vilom as well as this meditation. Is yoga very useful in diseases? Can you explain? Yes, I just talked about that how yoga is so useful in various diseases. Okay, somebody has said that Shilpa Shetty is addicted to Bihar School of Yoga. What is this? Okay, just there are different schools of yoga, but their ultimate all have 3 components. Some will focus on some particular asanas and a different type of meditation, but basically all are the same. Yeah, like someone has asked that I have a slip disc at L4, S4, S5 level. And I have pain. And so, yeah, that's what I said, that when you start doing yoga and when you have these issues, you must consult, do it under the supervision of a trained yoga instructor who will tell you which asanas to do. Like in these ones, you will not do the forward bending ones. So you must ask the instructor which ones have to be done. Will painkiller tablets affect fertility and the count in sperms? One must know what is a painkiller and how there are some painkillers and some drugs which do affect the quality of sperms. For example, drugs which are given for autoimmune diseases like salazopyrin and all, they are non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. They do affect the quality. There are many other drugs which affect the quality of sperms. One has to check. Okay, someone has said that how can yoga prevent cancer? See, the most important thing to remember is that cancer is a disease of the genome and epigenome, right? Now, when you have said electronic gadgets, for example, excessive use of cell phone is now known to cause damage to the DNA. It causes oxidative stress and damages the DNA. Now, it's well known that if you have yoga and you are using these electronic devices, you can increase the further the damage. And so it is now, if you practice yoga, you can decrease the levels of oxidative stress as well as reduce the damage to the DNA. But you should also avoid the excessive use of cell phones. Like it's been seen that people who are putting their phones always in their pocket, those males are infertile and they have poor quality sperm DNA because of the electromagnetic radiation. How to increase our memory by yoga? As I told you, when you practice yoga, there are various factors which promote neuroplasticity increase. And therefore, then it's been seen through studies of functional MRI that they increase the size of the hippocampus. They increase the size of the prefrontal cortex and certain parts of the brain which are the reward centers. So they, and especially increase in the hippocampus, the neurons and the number of neurons in the hippocampus will increase the memory, the retention part. Okay, ma'am, can practice yoga reduce post-COVID-19 neurological symptoms like brain fogging? See what are the problems which are occurring. We have recently published 2 papers on the effect of how yoga can help in COVID. Let me tell you that firstly, the fear, stress, anxiety of getting COVID can be reduced if you practice yoga, firstly. So it will also help to maintain your immune homeostasis. I have not got those slides, but we've seen that the number of cells which are causing these, which produce T helper 17 cells and the regulatory cells which maintain immune homeostasis go up, whereas the cell Th17 cells, their number comes down post yoga. And it's important to know that the cytokine storm which occurs is because of a highly exaggerated immune response, and yoga helps to reduce and maintains the immune homeostasis. I told you it decreases IL-6 levels, so they are giving antibodies against IL-6. So but yoga is itself decreasing the IL-6 levels, and definitely all the symptoms like brain fog and all can actually, because it occurs due to inflammation, will go down if you practice yoga. Somebody has asked to share the research papers. I will. Okay, someone has asked that can you actually cure these diseases? See, like I told you, like there are diseases which are running in families. For example, we have families which are having diabetes. Now, or if there are families which are having some autoimmune, for example, I told about autoimmune disease. Let's take that example again. So when you have these 14 base pair insertion deletion polymorphisms in the HLA-G gene, it results in lower level of the HLA-G levels, and which is actually responsible for rheumatoid arthritis. Irrespective of their genotype, these people, if you do yoga, the levels of HLA-G is going up. So if you know that this disease is running in your family, the thing is that these genes are not penetrant. They just increase your susceptibility to the disease. And now we know beyond doubt that when you practice yoga, you are altering the expression of genes. So we are upregulating the expression of genes which are beneficial for us and downregulating the expression of genes which are detrimental or inappropriate for our health, that is the genes for inflammation. So you can see that if you know for example, if there is diabetes in the family, if you have a healthy lifestyle, you do yoga, you eat a healthy diet, you curtail your sugar intake, don't have refined processed flour, you can actually prevent the onset of those diseases, or it may be so mild. For example, the rheumatoid arthritis may be so mild that you won't even need to take certain drugs. Or if it is, or you may need it for shorter periods or a very minimal dose as compared to the parents who are having it. So it's very, very important that to prevent, so I said that not only it prevents, it promotes health. And once you have it, it can be used as an adjunct in the management, right? Can schizophrenia be solved by yoga? Which asanas are helpful? I have not worked on schizophrenia, but I have read papers that it is useful. And I do not. I'm not the right person to talk because I've not worked on schizophrenia, but I have read papers. It is useful. What is keto diet and micronutrient diets? Okay, a keto diet is a diet which is high in proteins, and it's very. They say that these ketones are good for the brain, and I would like to emphasize that. There are both macro and micronutrients. Macro like carbohydrate, proteins, and micronutrients are the ones like phosphorus, magnesium, and all these ones which are found in small doses. So I would like to emphasize that now there's a big concept of having a nutritarian diet. Now, what's a nutritarian diet? It's a diet which is high in nutrients and low in calories. So when you get, suppose the nutrients are in the numerator and the calories in the denominator, a nutritarian diet is going to have a high value when it is a nutrient-rich diet. So we should try to emphasize to have that diet. What is epigenome? Okay, now see till date, till about say 20 to 30 years ago, it was believed that your health, your phenotype, or how you grow actually depends upon the genes that you inherit from your mother and father. So it was the blueprint of life. But now they know that what actually determines what you are, and this was a huge controversy, that are you the products of nature or are you the products of nurture? Nurture means the environment. And I would just like to just tell you an experiment. For example, you have a stem cell and you give it different media, different environments to grow. The stem cells which are having the same genotype will grow. One will grow into the cell of the pancreas, one will go into a cardiac cell, one will grow to form the neuron, right? So similarly, we have about 300 different cell types in our body, and all of them have identical genome, exactly same genome, but they are 350 different types because they have different epigenomes. So what is an epigenome? You can actually change the expression of the gene without changing the nucleotide sequence, right? So earlier it was believed that only when the nucleotide sequence was changed, you could alter the expression of genes. But now we know no. We can alter the expression of our genes by our lifestyle. For example, if you do yoga, you can increase the expression of genes which are beneficial for us, which are maintaining our homeostasis, which are maintaining immune regulation. And if you have a fast food diet or you have junk food every day, you will increase the expression of genes which cause inflammation and sets the stage for various disorders. So our epigenome is the epigenetic landscape. That is, you can change the expression of genes by your behavior, by your thoughts, by your diet, by your lifestyle. So this is very empowering. It actually shows you that you are actually the master of your destiny. You can change the expression of your genes by what you plan to, by your lifestyle, your diet, your thoughts, and all these are in your hand. How many hours of practice each day was conducted in studies you just shared? In our studies, because the people were doing yoga only for a short period and they were just novice, so we were making them do yoga for 60 to 80 minutes. But if you have, once you learn yoga, even if you do 30 minutes every day, but every day is important, you will have the same results. Okay, you must, but the main thing is just like you brush your teeth, you have to do yoga every day and you will see such profound benefits. By practicing yoga, is there any change occurring in our hereditary diseases like cancer, heart disease, or else? I would like to mention here that, in our genome, we just have about 3 to 5% genes which are highly penetrant. Means that if you have a mutation in that particular gene, you will develop the disease, right? Rest of the genes will only increase your susceptibility to develop the disease. They are not causal, right? And epigenetic changes which are brought about by yoga, by what you think, by your lifestyle, are also heritable. They are also heritable, so they will impact the transmission of these epigenetic marks are also transmitted to the next generation. So it's very, very important that we follow and do yoga, and this can impact how the gene is being transmitted, what are the epigenetic marks, is the gene hypermethylated or hypomethylated? These are transmitted to the next generation. Can you please mention some yogas to do in home? Is Surya Namaskar enough? Yes, Surya Namaskar is very good because it is like, it is practically having all the asanas, but you must do pranayam as well as meditation, right? Many doctors suggest not to do yoga in few types of human diseases. Why? See, that's what I said in the beginning, that you must consult. Suppose you have some issues, health issues, you must consult the doctor. For example, if you have increase in intra-abdominal blood pressure, you will not do certain asanas, for example, pushing your stomach forcibly in, because that is going to make the blood rush into your heart, increase the BP. For like I told you, in glaucoma, you will not do forward bending asanas. In depression, you will not do meditation a lot because the person's mind starts further wandering. So it's very, very important that you consult a trained yoga instructor and then do yoga. Is yoga useful for curing sinusitis? Yes, it's very, very useful for respiratory health. Very useful. Has yoga affected, how has yoga affected you, ma'am? When exactly did you start learning yoga? Okay. Yes, it has really affected my life. I wanted to tell you I was very fond of eating. I'm still very fond of eating, but it has helped me check my weight. It has come down from, it was 92, then it went down, then again it jumped up. So it has helped me curtail my, bring my weight down. It has helped me, emotional eating. You just eat when you're hungry, or, you have a bad habit, all that has stopped. And it has helped me a lot in many ways, increase focus, and I think overall I have a very positive attitude because of yoga. So I think it's very, very important. Any special yogas for diabetes patients, which is the best time of the day to practice yoga? Actually, yoga is a way of life. Everything that you practice, I mean, it could be any part of the day, but do it daily. That's most important. And ma'am, there is a N. Sudhakaran. Actually, we are not doing for diabetes, but there are protocols for different diseases. But there are certain, if you do anything which will help in weight loss, which will also help to curtail your, improve your diabetes issues. Is there any connection between yoga, pineal gland, and chakras? As I told you, yes. When you are doing, for example, when you do pranayam, and then you have those bands which you lagao, the Jalandhar band, then Udyan band, and the Mool band, they help in, the movement of the pran shakti and the raising of the kundalini and all, and they help in the, charging the chakras. They are useful, yes. I will share my research papers. Okay, what is the importance of fasting? Actually, this is beyond this. Fasting is useful because it helps in promote autophagy, remove all these, it's very, very important. Fasting is very useful. It helps to activate autophagy and remove all the waste materials and the dead dying cells. There are a lot of papers on yoga, so you can read them. Somebody has said which papers nowadays. This is a very, very active field. And so you find every day, you find some new papers on yoga. You must read them and you must adopt yoga. Actually, I don't know which one should be practiced by kyphoscoliotic individuals, but you can consult a yoga instructor. What is the benefit when we do yoga practice at Brahma Muhurta? That's the best time actually to meditate because there is complete silence and highest oxygen levels. So that's an ideal time, to actually do meditation. The effect is much, much more. There's minimal disturbance. Yeah, and I would like to emphasize here, sometimes people do yoga watching the television, or we just do one asana after the other and we don't do shavasana. When you practice yoga, you should do it most carefully with closed eyes and being fully mindfully aware of what you're doing. Do not do it talking to someone or seeing the television or chatting with someone on the cell phone. Then it won't affect. You should, whatever you do, if you do it for 20 minutes, but be fully present in what you're doing. How to improve memory power? Any yoga, pranayama, meditation will increase the various factors which promote neuroplasticity, which will help in the memory. Yeah, sleep. Somebody has written regarding they have disturbed sleep. Yeah, when you practice yoga, it is going to help you normalize your sleep-wake cycle because various factors which promote circadian rhythm will increase. Somebody has written, my friend has suggested not to follow yoga because it can result in something we can't handle. You've talked in our rock chakras. See, I'm not the right one to guide, but yes, he's right because this is all related to Kundalini and awakening, and that helps. Actually, it always should be done. This Kundalini and all should be done under a guru or a master because sometimes the effect is so profound that we are not able to handle it. So those are different things, and they should be done always under the guidance of a person who's highly trained in this. Does face yoga really work? Any yoga will work. I mean, you see, when we are talking of yoga, it's just not asanas. If you do pranayama and meditation, it will help. Yes, yoga nidra helps. Some days again. Somebody says, I want to pursue higher studies. Yes, there are many centers, for example, S. Vyasa, and many centers where there's a lot of research on yoga. Yes, definitely yoga is very important for curing allergies. If you do pranayama, it can help you, it's a very good cure for asthma and even allergic wheezing. Yes, it helps. For depressed individuals, it's very important if they do Surya Namaskar and asanas, as well as breathing practices, it will help in depression. That was the last question.
Thank you so much, ma'am. You have patiently answered all the questions in the Q&A box. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And shall we wind up, ma'am?
Yeah.
Dear participants, today we have jointly organized the Agora webinar with the Indian Science Congress Association, ISCA Cochin chapter. Now I invite Dr. K.V. Jayachandran, convener, ISCA Cochin chapter, for the formal vote of thanks. Over to you, Jayachandran, sir.
Madam, good evening, everybody. I feel so much blessed in organizing such a seminar, such a webinar, because my association with Madam lasts for many years, and 2 years back, Madam traveled almost a few districts in Kerala and discussed about the importance of yoga, starting from school children up to the degree and postgraduate level of students. I know Madam is a very consistent, research worker. Very often doctors take medicine, MD or more higher degrees, and getting a PhD and sticking on to the research area is very, very rare. And Dr. Rima Dada is an exceptional case. I'm not going to talk too much on what Madam has expressed here. Touched upon a few areas like male infertility, then childhood cancer, autoimmunity, arthritis, glaucoma, depression. All these are very, very important ones as far as the nowadays the people are facing. And definitely the talk by Madam is exceptionally useful to most of the people gathered here. And from the questions they have proposed, we can feel that everyone is attentive, enjoyed your talk, and whatnot. Almost 47 questions raised or queries raised for getting answers. Madam, on behalf of everybody who were participants in the webinar, starting from the college authorities, all the Indian Science Congress Association officials, people, these people, I would like to express our deep sense of gratitude to you, Madam, for spending almost 2 hours in this regard in expressing the importance of yoga to our people. let me also express our thankfulness to college authorities for giving the platform for this webinar, and especially to principal and also Dr. Jisha in arranging this IQSC chairperson, and all of this. And also my sincere thanks to all participants who have actively participated in this seminar. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jayachandran, for inviting me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. We'll be in touch. We'll be in touch.
Yes,
I'll
sir.
call you sometime. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. So can I get the recording for this talk?
Sure, ma'am. I will send
Okay.
you received.
Gmail.
I think there is a provision that it is in the YouTube also.
Okay.